form because it's creativity and everything. But I'm really excited about being here, honestly. I was asked here because of my time in Portland with Leverage and Librarians. I don't do a lot of conferences or seminars or things because I have real specific thoughts about screenwriting and how to, and I'm a big basher. If you follow me on Twitter, you've probably muted me already. I'll occasionally rant about how-to books and cat saving and inciting incidents and all that stuff, because I really am a big believer in the creative process, and so I was really excited when Steve asked me here about this today. I think the creative process is the most important part of art and what I do and what the other people have been up here, but it seems the least talked about. And for me, there's a great quote. My favorite quote of anyone ever about screenwriting was by one of my screenwriting heroes, Tony Gilroy, who said, and I'm going to actually read it so I get it exactly right because it's the greatest thing ever about screenwriting. The quality of your writing is absolutely capped at your understanding of human behavior. You will never write above what you know about people. And that is absolutely true. So if you're wondering why your screenplays suck and you don't know why your sister or boyfriend or girlfriend is acting the way they are, there's a connection there. So, the creative process, I'm going to work hard to give my brother Andre out there an aha moment here. The creative process, for me, I'll talk a little bit about mine personally, and everybody's different, obviously, everybody's different, but if you can take one little thing away from this today, then I've done my job. For me, I have a real specific process, even though it's creative and it's right brain and everything, and I got it from Josh Waitkins. If you don't know who that is, he was a chess prodigy and world chess champion as a kid. They made the movie Searching for Bobby Fischer about him. Then after he became that and kind of walked away from chess, Josh decided, I want to study martial arts and become a world champion at martial arts, and he did. He went and ended up 7 or 8 years after he started in Thailand, competed for and won a world championship. And he wrote this, he kind of stunned himself, like, how did I do that? And he wrote this great book I highly recommend called The Art of Learning. And one of the things that he talks about in this book is something that I have adapted for myself, and I use it every day of my life. And it's, for me, as a writer, my job's pretty stupid. I make stuff up. And to do that, in order to do that, you have to be in the most creative place you can be. So I used to start each day, like most of us, where you wake up, what do? Check your phone, right? It's like, see who texted me while I was asleep, see what my emails are, see who's on Instagram, see what's happening on Twitter, see, whatever, Facebook. And what he talked about that I tried and actually found to be absolutely true and amazing is I now start my day without going near this thing for an hour and a half. Because what he talked about was when you wake up and the first thing you do is open your email or check Twitter or do something like that, you are immediately putting yourself into a reactive state because you are reacting to what you're seeing and reading. Whereas if you wake up and before you turn on the TV or check your phone or do anything, you go to work. You start writing, you start designing, you start doing whatever you do, and you do that for a specific amount of time. And mine is 90 minutes in the morning, like not 89 minutes, it's 90 minutes before I take a breath. I go in and I do that. And the first couple of weeks I tried it, it was horrible. Because I sat there looking at the clock and nothing would come. But I stuck to it, I committed to it, and then it was like, oh, I had one little thing and that led, and then it's just like exercising or diet or doing anything else. The more you do it, and then it slowly starts to become a habit and a routine. And I got better each day. And now that 90 minutes to start my day is, some days it expands into 3 hours, because I don't, like at 90 minutes if I'm rocking, I don't shut it off, I'll keep going. But at 90 minutes if I'm not having a great day, it's like, all right, 90 minutes, now I can take a break and everything, but I've done that. And it's changed my life as an artist. And I can't recommend it enough. And it's such a little thing. And then you can go about your day and you do your thing, but you've started your day in this active mode as opposed to reactive. So then by the time, 90 minutes later or 2 hours later, when you start reacting to stuff, you've already got your positive, creative spin going for that day. So that's just a little pro tip on my creative process. So I'm big on the muse. That's another big part of my process. I cannot write a word, whether it's prose or screenwriting or anything. I can't write a word without music. And that's been to my detriment sometimes because I've been on television shows and, Paul, where's your script? Well, I don't have the playlist yet. And it's because I will literally, if you look, I've got 5,900 songs on my iTunes. And I have a playlist for every single project that I do. And I just can't write until I find the music. And sometimes it's soundtracks and scores, and sometimes it's music with lyrics, and it just all depends. But that's one of my muses, You can have people can be a muse, Your environment can be a muse. And I think for me, I get inspired, and that fuels my creativity. The music inspires me. The music just gets me creating. I see images in my head, and what I do is so visual that I need that, And so I will see the scenes in my head and stuff based on the music. Or sometimes in my life, I've had people that have been a muse, and that worked too. The music's always been there. The people muses have come and gone, but my music muse never leaves me. So I've been doing this for a few years like that. But one thing that was crazy up until last year is I thought I was this really creative guy, I had at one point, I adapted the Waitskins thing, like in, 2012 or 2013. And I was rolling, and I had a pretty good career, from like the end of the 90s all the way through. I hadn't been unemployed for 15, 16, however many years it was. But I realized I wasn't being as creative as I could be. And even though I was doing great, like one thing, and this is the first clip I'm going to show, is a show called Leverage. I don't know if anybody knows about it, but it was, shot here in Portland. It's a great show. It was the best job I've ever had. Leverage was fantastic. And so one of the things that this is just an example of creativity is on Leverage. Leverage is one of the only, and Librarians, independently produced television shows on TV, 1-hour television shows, Electric Entertainment's the studio. There's a lot of great things about having an independently produced show. There's also a lot of bad things. One of them is they're terrified of getting sued because they don't have the money that Sony has or Universal. So clearance was a real issue on these shows. Clearance is when, if you name a character Joe Smith and, if there's a Joe Smith in Ecuador or somewhere, then they'll say, well, you can't use Joe Smith because he might sue us because he'll think that we're writing about him. So I was always at war on Leverage with the clearance people at Electric. And it got so frustrating, it hit a tipping point at one time where I had like 4 or 5 names rejected. And so I decided to use this name, Gar Slabdash, and I spelled Gar, G-N-A-R. And it passed clearance. And so I was so excited that day. I can still remember getting the sheet that, like, yes, there are no Gar Slabdashes in Portland, Oregon. And so then I was like, well, because I can be kind of a jerk sometimes. I was like, all right, that's not enough that I won. Now I'm going to just stick it to him a little bit. So I added it into the dialogue of that episode. Yeah, so I was doing pretty well. I was on a lot of shows. I had a pretty good level. I was making a lot of money and everything. And then in 2015, my world kind of caved in. I've been divorced for a few years, and after I was divorced, I met someone who, thought was the soulmate. It was like, oh, this is what love is, and this is why, and it's so great, and everything's great. And, my life was wonderful. I had a muse, and she was really hot, and, and we got along, and great, and she loved what I did, and then she cut me off at the knees really unexpectedly. Just one of those things. We've all been through it. We've all been cut and scarred. that's not really the point, but it killed me. It crushed me. And this was right when season 2 of Librarians was happening, and the showrunner, creator of Librarians, John Rogers, who was supposed to be here but couldn't because he has some family illnesses, he got a new show on NBC called The Player. He kind of had to split his focus between that and Librarians. The person who's the head of the studio with Librarians took offense to that, and it became this war between the two of them. I was number 2 to John. He's the EP. I was the co-executive producer. Anyways, John left, head of the studio left, and the show was just dumped in my lap. And I got parked up in Portland. I was in Portland last year I went to LA in February. I got to Portland the end of March. I got home to my kids the end of September. And this happened simultaneously with my personal life caving in. And so there were literally these, these days, sobbing on the floor of a hotel room in the fetal position and all this, and how am I going to be creative? How I can't write anything, that tortured artist thing. But suddenly there's 200 people in charge, or I'm in charge of waiting to make a television show, and a network and a studio spending millions of dollars every week. So, I had to realize nobody was coming to save me. I had to get up off the floor myself. And you never realize how strong you are until being strong is the only choice you have. And I had to turn to my creativity. That was the only thing I had. Look, the reason I'm a writer, because I have no skills, I can't build anything. I can't make anything. I can't be an accountant. I don't have that quality. All I have is making stuff up. And so got up and I would go to work, and I literally, this is honestly true, I would go to the set and I would be on set and I would be telling the director and the actors, here's what we're doing today and this and that, and then I'd go, all right, I gotta run to the restroom, guys, be right back. And I'd go into the bathroom and I would sob for like a minute or two. I was just like leaning over the sink, bawling. And then I would clean myself up, I'd look in the mirror, I'd do all that jazz saying, it's showtime, folks. And I'd go back out, and I'd go out as long as I could last until I had to go to the restroom again. And this just went on and on through each week. You talk to anybody that worked on Librarians season 2, it's like, how was Guyot? It's like, oh, yeah. Everybody knew I was a mess, but I got through it. And the moment that I had where I knew not only was I going to get through it, but I'm okay, and it's because I'm an artist, it's because of my creative process, is this battle that was waging these two people above me they kept upping the stakes, and it was like, quick little sidebar, I used to be a stand-in. That was my career before I became a writer, and I was on this terrible movie once with Don Johnson and Mickey Rourke, and I know, no, trust me, I'm going to tie this in. And they hated each other, and they started competing. Like, Mickey had a trailer, so then Don got this custom bus. So then Mickey had to get a bus with a gym attached to it. So then Don had to get a bus with satellite television. And then Mickey wouldn't come out unless Don was on set. Don wouldn't come out unless Mickey. And so it just became this thing. So that's what was happening on Librarians. And on a Thursday afternoon, a script that we were in the middle of prepping, you prep an episode for 6 days, you shoot it for 7 days. And it's like clockwork. Once the train starts, that's why television is so rough. It goes, and you have to, stay ahead of the train. On a Thursday afternoon, the studio threw out the script that we were going to start shooting on Monday, and without checking with anyone. We were on set shooting the current episode, and a memo came from the office. And we got a memo. What's the memo? Oh, episode 6 will not be shot. Episode blah, blah, blah. Paul Guyot will deliver a new script on Monday morning to all the department heads. And I was, and this was where I was like, just getting through the day. And so I didn't know how I was going to do this. I'd never had to be creative under any sort of duress. And, it was, I had this moment on Friday, the next day, because I was panicked. And there was nobody I could call because I was in charge. There wasn't anyone I could turn to. And I was on set the next morning, and I was at catering, because catering's the best. And I'm getting my breakfast or whatever, and I'm just a wreck, and I'm sitting there going, I'm going to get fired. This show's going to have to shut down because of me, even though it's really because the guy threw out the script, but it's all going to fall on me. And I saw this family came to set, and they had this little baby, not quite a toddler, but just learning to walk. And I'm kind of watching, and this little kid, like she's sitting there, is like, oh yeah, she's learning how to walk. Takes a step, face plants, Little one gets up again, face plant. Kid gets up again, couple more steps, goes down. And I had this epiphany. I was like, that kid's never going to fall down and go, well, that's enough of that. I'm just going to crawl or have somebody carry me the rest of my life. She kept getting up, and she kept trying, because it wasn't about, that quitting wasn't an option. And it was like, and I still remember, goosebumps right now telling this, like exactly where I was, exactly where that kid was, and I just thought, I can do this. I left set, locked myself in a hotel room, the Lucia, highly recommend, and over the next 40 hours, I wrote a brand new episode of the show from scratch. And what I used, my muse, my muse had left me. My muse was with a really rich guy in Philadelphia. Did I say that out loud? Okay, I wasn't gonna bring that in. Okay, let me show you her Instagram. No. So I'm okay, really. And it's all about forgiveness. You got to release the anger. So I was like, I don't have it, Music wasn't working. I'm listening to music. I'm like, I don't have time to create a playlist now. I have to have a script. And then that old thing of write what you know, which, people bash and bash because most people don't understand what that means. And I think it's true in design and any kind of creative endeavor. Write what you know means write what's inside you. And what was inside me was this relationship and everything that had happened and how, when I met her, she was really broken and I fixed her and I did this and then I got nothing for her and all this. And it started to come out of me in this episode. So much of the dialogue in that episode was out of my relationship, and I just purged all my demons that weekend. And that's how I got through it. And I used my creativity, and I sort of did the reverse muse and used what had, destroyed me to do something that I didn't think I could do at all. So anyway, so I got through that. So I did that, and I got through, and once I delivered that episode at like 11:30 that Sunday night, I was a different person, and I was like, oh, I get it now. I would have never believed in myself prior to all this happening. If you had said, hey, if you get handed a show, can you handle it and can you run it for 7.5 episodes and get everything done? No, I'm not qualified to do that. Can you write a script from scratch in 40 hours with no story? And like, no, who can do that? Nobody can do that. And I did it, and I did it well. It's not the best episode of the series, but it's a pretty good episode, and it also helped me get past, the personal stuff. I mean, I'm being, jokey about it here, but I really did get through it and get by it. And so that was 2015. That was September. We wrapped 2015 last September. I came back from that, and I was like, okay, I've been working for other people my whole life. I've been doing what I want to do. I'm good at what I do. I've been really creative in the moment. When I had to write a specific episode, I was creative, but I wasn't feeding my soul. I was interpreting other people's stuff. Leverage was John Rogers' show. Librarians was John Rogers' show. Other things I'd worked on. Geostorm was Dean's movie. And I came back from that with so much confidence that I was finally going to trust myself to just be my own muse, almost. So there was an idea that I'd been sitting on for 6 years. This old St. Louis newspaper reporter told me, now 7 years, at the time it was 6 years ago, he told me about this cop named Ira Cooper, who was, all right, in the history of Scotland Yard, four American policemen have been recognized with the special commendation they have for outstanding achievement. Alan Pinkerton, Elliot Ness, Frank Serpico, and Ira Cooper. Why do we know the other three? We don't know Ira Cooper. Ira Cooper was black. He was one of the first African-American detectives in the city of St. Louis. It was right after turn of the century, like 1904 up through 1920. And he led the first all African-American squad of detectives. And then when I heard that story, I was like, I gotta tell that. That's the greatest thing ever. And I never believed in myself. I sat on that story, and I kept, every day I was gonna swear that I'm gonna wake up and no, Denzel's playing Ira Cooper. You know, I just knew that was gonna happen, but I didn't think I was good enough to write that story. I came back from Librarians, and that's all I wanted to do. And so I spent, you know, the rest of last year developing it, coming up with this pitch, and it was my opus. So my agents at the time found a job for me the end of last year as the #2 co-executive producer on a really big ABC series. Would have been more money than I've ever been paid, would have gotten me out of the electric bubble, as they call it, because I'd spent the last 5 years on these 2 shows up here. Would have been great for my career. And I told them I don't want to do it. And my agents and they almost fired me, I almost fired them. The agents can't really fire you. They almost, you know, just wanted to quit me. And I wanted to fire them. And I had one of my agents literally told me at one point, you are committing career suicide if you go through with this. And, you know, they were like, take the job, work 2 years on that show, become the big broadcast guy that saves other people's shows and stuff, then you can develop your stuff. You know, those African-American cop things, that's always gonna be around. You know, you can do that a couple years from now. And I was done working for other people in the sense, not that I won't ever work for somebody before, but stuff that wasn't coming out of me, out of my creative soul. So I turned it down. And I was gonna pitch my little cable show. And even if nobody bought it, even if we were laughed out of the rooms, it was what I had to do as an artist and for myself. So the long story short, of course, we went into 9 different networks. We had 4 networks bidding against each other for it. And we ended up going to Nat Geo because brand new, they're launching this channel next year called Nat Geo Original, and they wanted our show to be the show that launches that new network. So that was really exciting. So, you know, it just shows then from that, so that happened in like January, February. And as a byproduct of that, I've now got, like he read off the other stuff, you know, it sounds real cool and you know, but it's like, yeah, I'm doing this book series now for Sony. I'm doing this giant movie I'm writing. I'm, you know, have this other project going, adapting this Netflix documentary. And all those people have come to my reps because they read all the headlines I made with Black 22s. That's the name of the show. And that only happened because I followed my heart, because I was going to serve myself creatively. And if there's anything you're gonna take away from this today, it's that, you know, we all work for other people at times and stuff, but you wouldn't have paid money to come here today if you don't have that artist inside you. If you don't have, no matter what you do, whether you're a writer, whether you're a tech designer, whether you're fashion, there's an artist inside every one of you, and I would bet that because the reason you paid to come here today is because a lot of you are not fully embracing that artist in you and believing in yourself. You can do more than you think you can. You know, you are better than you think you are. And you have to follow that muse that's inside you, more than the music muse, more than the soulmate muse, more than, you know, the environmental muse. And if you do that, it's gonna be hard, and it's gonna be jagged and rocky, and it's gonna suck, and then it's gonna be the greatest decision you've ever made. So, you know, your journey may not be, what I had to realize, your journey may not be about becoming something. That's what I thought it was, and it was actually about unbecoming everything that I wasn't. So that's just what I want to leave you with today, is that do that. Unbecome who you're not. So we want to...
It's turn around and walk back out. But
It's Guyot.
Yeah, for a guy who makes up names like Slapdash, I mean, you're really sensitive about that. And you told me that last night, and I still mispronounced it.
I know, but you were drunk.
Shh. The sad thing is I wasn't. So let's open it up to questions for Paul. Mr. Guyot. Yes, sir, you're right there. How do you deal with procrastination?
That was something I've struggled with. I grew up very undisciplined. I was not in a disciplined household, and I had to learn discipline as an adult. Like, I barely got through college. I was a creative writing major in college, and thank God that I was in a department at a university that really sucked. Because if it had been good, I wouldn't have made it through. Because I had no discipline. You couldn't get me to study, you couldn't get me, and I had to teach myself as an adult to get disciplined, and that's how I deal with procrastination, which, people call it writer's block. There's a whole debate whether that exists or not. It's procrastination. That's what writer block is. It's like procrastinating. You can stand there, and stare at your computer and go, oh no, I'm trying to work, but I'm blocked. It's like, no, you're not. You're not disciplined. And it came from when I started that thing of starting every morning. Like I said, for the first almost 2 weeks, nothing came, but I did not leave that chair, or if I did, if I went and did something, I was not looking at anything or reacting to anything, and just that was how I started getting where I'm now can sit down. I said earlier today, I don't know, it was around about 10:30 this morning, something happened in here. I was listening to somebody. This is so dumb. I went to the restroom. Sorry, I'm going to get really personal here. I was at a urinal. And I have this, lanyard on with this thing, right? So I flipped it over my shoulder, stand at the urinal, right? And in the middle of standing at the urinal, I just turned or something, and this thing flew back like that, and I kind of went, ah! Because I thought somebody was coming up on me, while I'm there. This really happened downstairs in the restroom today. And then I was like, oh, that's it. And then immediately, I had a scene for something that I'm developing, got done, washed my hands, and went out and sat down and typed for 20 minutes. And so to answer the question about procrastination, I just don't allow myself that opportunity to procrastinate. If I'm working, I'm working. And there's a great quote, Burton Rasco, I think is the name of the guy. I'm a big quote guy. And he said something a long time ago, 60, 80 years ago, what no spouse of a writer will ever understand is that when the writer is sitting in a chair staring out the window, they're actually working. And so there's just a fine line that you have to figure out, and it's just being authentic with who you are and honest with yourself. Am I procrastinating right now, or am I really working? If you're just sitting staring out the window, is whatever's going through your head in that general neighborhood, doesn't have to be the house number, but in that neighborhood of what you're working on, you're not procrastinating. If you're sitting in that chair and you're thinking about, what am I going to have for dinner tonight? I wonder if Larry's going to go see the movie at Hollywood Theater without me, because he told me last week he was going to go with me and he didn't. And then you're procrastinating. And it just, for me, became a discipline thing of being really honest with myself. That's a lousy answer, isn't it?
Well, in a way, that's the only choice at that point in your life that you had, like you said.
Yeah.
Right? It's a tough lesson to have to go through.
Yeah, it was horrible, and yet I wouldn't regret 1 second of last year at all now. I wouldn't regret, the worst, 4:30 in the morning, sobbing on a hotel room floor, thinking, how messed up would my kids be if I kill myself? I was at that point. And now, standing here, I wouldn't regret 1 second of what I went through, because I'm a better writer, I'm a better producer, I'm a better father, I'm a better man, I'm a better human being because of that. And it goes to tie it back into this, because I finally got in touch with what was really, truly my creative side and my process as an artist and, you know, that muse that's inside all of us.
Do you still use playlists?
I do.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, that didn't go away. Yeah.
Yeah, right on. Right
Yeah.
on. Yes.
So you said you've got a process. Do you have a structure, like a story Bible structure, or something where you write into as far as a framework?
Yeah, did you hear?
Did you hear the question? Does he have a framework that he writes into? Does he have some writers have structures that they follow.
So my structure is a minimum of 6 mornings a week, sometimes 7, but I usually will give myself a Sunday where I try not to work at all on Sunday. Plus, when I'm a parent, I've got 3 kids, and that's the hardest thing. You talk about discipline, man. But my structure is I don't allow anything in my world for that first 90 minutes of the day. And now it's almost about 2 hours pretty regularly now. Nothing comes into my world until then. You know, my phone is on airplane mode when I go to bed at night, and it doesn't go off of airplane mode until I have put that 90 minutes in the morning. And then from that, my day is just organic. And yeah.
Well, I mean, I'm thinking more of like in the narrative itself, like story Bible or construct that you...
Of when I actually physically write something? Oh, okay. Well, that all depends on what I'm working on. For me, when I'm pitching a television show like this one, the one I'm going to do in a couple weeks in LA, you know, I have to have the pilot episode in my head. I have to have a cast of characters. I have to have arcs of season 1. I have to have all that. So that's what I'll work on, and what I start with changes on every project, because right now I really trust my creative side, and if it's all about the 2 characters and their relationship, I'll write all that stuff first. I'll write it to death. If it's about the setting and the tone and, you know, whatever the plot lines are, I will dive into that and do that. But that's for television. I have to have all those things for anything I do. Movies are a little different. This movie I'm doing right now, you know, they call it a treatment. Television, it's an outline. Movies, it's a treatment. It's the same thing. And so in this treatment, I have to have like a treatment that's anywhere from 8 to 25 pages, which basically just tells you the story of the movie, beginning to end, and who's in it. And I'm working on that now. And the movie's based on this real group of people. Those are amazing. It's like real life Expendables. And I will go and I'll talk to them, I'll Skype with them, or I'll go down to Florida and see them, and then every time I do, something new comes up, and I got to go back to what I'm working on, and I'm like, oh, I'm going to change this now, and that over here totally isn't as good as what I just learned this weekend, and so that's, you know, that's the structure that I have to have for my job.
Yes, all the way in the back. Yes, sir. Do you shower and get coffee before you?
No, you know what? It's a great question. It's a great question, because this is me personally. You know, I have a lot of most of my friends are writers, and novelists too, not just screenwriters. And so many of them are like, I love my job because I can write in my pajamas. I go to work in my bathrobe and all that. I can't do that, because to me, that is counter to my creative process. I have to get up. I have to get in the shower. I have to put clothes on. And it's like, yeah, you can have that day where you stay in your sweats and your hoodie because you just get up and it's like, bam, I'm going to hit the computer. I'm going to hit the Midori if you write by hand or whatever you write on. But I make a point of getting dressed for work. It's my job. I'm going to work. And for me, I work better that way. First thing I do is I get out of bed. I don't go straight to the computer. I get out of bed. I'll do maybe some kind of exercise or whatever. I'll get some coffee. But I don't lounge around and procrastinate, you know. I mean, I'm in the shower 15 minutes max after I'm out of bed to get that invigorating, you know, thing. And then you get out, and then I get dressed for the day. And even though if I'm spending a whole day at my house, I'm dressed for work. And that just, for me personally, helps me be in a better mindset creatively than if it's just like, you know, oh, I'm going to go sit down now, and that's just me.
Is that part of your new process, that the newfound discipline, or were you always like that?
I kind of was always like that. Back on Judging Amy, which I worked on like 2001, 2002, 2003. It was way before I had this whole creative thing. And that was a show where I was the youngest, most inexperienced writer, and I was with these very, very seasoned writers, and they were pros. And, you know, and luckily it wasn't me, but somebody else one day showed up for work in shorts, just short, I mean, still nice, cargo shorts, whatever. And the showrunner, she was like, "We don't do shorts here. We're professional writers. You know, show up looking like a professional." And that always stuck in my head, and I just started doing it from that, and it works for me.
I noticed shaving is optional.
You know, it all depends.
We have time for one more question. Yes, right there. Sorry.
Are you sure it was me? I bet it was Kevin. I bet it was Kevin.
You said, you know, it's not about becoming something, it's about you doing what you
Yeah.
Can you give us some examples of that?
Go ahead.
Well, you rephrase it.
So
Well, you have a mic.
Yeah. So he's asking about when I said, you know, sometimes your journey isn't about becoming something; it's about unbecoming something that you're not. And so that was what me. Like I said before all this stuff last year, I was a guy that I thought success was getting the next job, doing a good job, having people like your script, getting hired, having people say, "Oh, I want to work with Paul Guyot." And that really wasn't me. And now it goes back, it's like, oh, maybe that had something to do with why I was unhappy in my marriage. Maybe that had something to do with why, you know, in 2010 I was 242 pounds. Maybe, you know, I wasn't serving who I really was. And so last year when I was like, I made this decision to go develop this show, like I have 3 kids in private school, and then I have, you know, alimony and child support payments, and I was going to do something that potentially could destroy me employment-wise. You know, I was turning down a massive job, you know, knowing those 3 kids are in school, and I was, you know, going to do this thing that could have resulted in a big fat zero. And that's what I mean is I had to unbecome that guy from 2014, the guy who was so happy with the soulmate, you know, I was living a lie. I was doing okay, but I wasn't okay in here. And so I had to take the chance to trust myself. And I'm a different, like if you had met me in 2014, who I am right now, I'm a completely different person. I talk different, I'm different. But I believe I'm my most authentic self right now.
A classic story of self-transformation and creativity. And Robin has your book title. Can you bring that slide back up again? She has the title of your book. And frankly, the cover art, The 90-Minute Muse. Please thank Paul Guyot.
Thank you. Thanks, Paul. Is it all right?